Guys, my name is Jessie Forbes and this is my MACS390 short draft. Okay, the argument over whether or not euthanasia should be made legal in Australia is very widely contested. Through the process of understanding debates over euthanasia from both an individual's right to life compared to their religious issues, it becomes evident that it is necessary for euthanasia to become legalised in Australia. Okay. Euthanasia, which can be described in similar terms, refers to the process of killing prompted by a humanitarian move. It is often justified as being a means to the end of the suffering of another human being. This can be the result of an illness, a mental illness, or infants who have suffered serious birth defects. It fails to recognise the morals and ethics given through human rights and religious notions, however. That's taken from Sanders in 1969. The idea of euthanasia can be seen in my media item. This is a simple cartoon which was used to promote the battle for the legislation and legalisation of euthanasia within America. It's actually been released by an American political party called the New Party, and they were in serious support of euthanasia. Okay, so the discussion of the use of euthanasia can be divided into two categories. Firstly, we've got the ideas that physicians should be allowed to perform euthanasia upon ill patients. An example of that is the article called Paging Dr. Death, the Political Theatre of Assisted Suicide in Michigan. This article describes the situation of a Dr. Jack Kevorkian. His ultimate goal was to create public policy legalising and regulating physician-assisted death. That's taken from Fino, Strait and Zellman in 1997. Kevorkian was then termed Dr. Death after he first assisted a lady in Oregon who had been suffering from Alzheimer's disease to commit suicide. This caused great uproar within the society and divided opinions about the legislation of voluntary euthanasia. Those that believed in voluntary euthanasia and its legalisation then created policies that explained that there must be a number of criteria to be met before euthanasia could be performed. This included being sound of mind and that their life was ending with much suffering. So only two conditions there, taken from Sanders in 1969. This legislation of voluntary euthanasia meant that it would be legally viable to end the pain suffered by those who could not help themselves, even with the help of modern medicine and prescribed medication. However, there's also a lot of opposition to legalising euthanasia, which remains quite prominent within society. There are varied reasons brought about by these ideas, including religion as well as ideologies, which I'm going to talk about later, demonstrated by Yao Kamisar, who raised the question about whether or not the benefits of legalising euthanasia actually outweigh the benefits of euthanasia itself, taken from Day in 1998. Okay, so when divided into religious views on euthanasia, it is evident that it would be a strongly opposed issue. This can be seen in the article Catechism of the Catholic Church on Life, Abortion and Euthanasia. This article describes euthanasia as morally unacceptable. I quote, "Whatever its motives and means, direct euthanasia consists in putting an end to the lives of the handicapped, sick or dying persons. It is morally unacceptable." Taken from that article. In this description, the Catholic doctrine vehemently describes their opposition to euthanasia or physician-assisted suicide or assisted suicide, as it's described by the Nightingale Alliance in 2006. The Catholic faith also states that euthanasia is a question of the violation of the divine law, an offence against the dignity of the human person, a crime against life, and an attack on humanity. Life is a gift of God, and if it necessary, we therefore must, without in any way hastening the hour of death, be able to accept it with full responsibility and dignity. That's taken from the Vatican Declaration on Euthanasia in 1980. As a result of euthanasia, one's body is destroyed without God's will, which the church is obviously completely opposed to, hence their views against the legalisation of euthanasia. That quote there is taken from 1980, so that just goes to show that this has been debated and contested for quite some time now, coming up to 32 years. Okay. Similarly, euthanasia is not justified also in Jewish religion. It is a form of suicide, which is something that the Jewish religion is completely in opposition to. I quote, "The tradition prohibits suicide except as an act of martyrdom," which is very dissimilar to the process of euthanasia, taken from Dorff in 1999. Similarly, the act of assisted suicide is also prohibited for exactly the same reasons as suicide, because that and euthanasia are associated together and therefore prohibited from the Jewish religion. Opposition to voluntary euthanasia can be seen in the works of Yao Kamasa, mentioned previously. He was a university professor who described his opposition to euthanasia as being a result of the questioning of its benefits to and within society, and whether or not those benefits actually outweighed the benefits of euthanasia itself, taken from Day in 1998. He believed that more would actually suffer as a result of the legalisation of euthanasia, rather than the number of victims who would benefit from euthanasia legalisation. That is, the legalisation would put many dying people at risk of losing their lives unjustly, and as a result, family members, them conforming to doctors' pressure about the use of euthanasia on a patient. He also feared that by euthanasia's legalisation, that those in society who were most vulnerable would be easily subjected to euthanasia, and society overall losing the value of life. Also taken from Day in 1998. So, as convincing as the arguments that have been placed forward have appeared, they are also quite flawed and don't alter the opinion that euthanasia should be legalised in Australia. Mainly from American sources these have been taken, but these arguments against euthanasia still don't hold strong enough evidence to remain the decisive factors in deciding against the idea of euthanasia and whether or not it should become legalised in Australia. The religion argument is mainly an appeal to emotion, and the argument that's placed on behalf of Casimir is one of an appeal to ignorance. The argument itself also commits a fallacy, the slippery slope argument, as it forms two morally problematic conclusions. They are, firstly, that it's permissible only if euthanasia is permissible, and secondly, permissible only if only available to every patient. That's taken from Lillehammer in 2002. Therefore, also, if one doesn't follow a religion that is opposed to euthanasia, which most are, they are actually not affected by the claims made by any of those authorities. This weakens the religious argument significantly. Also, Casimir's argument does not hold enough evidential proof to support his conclusion and hold his argument true. He merely appears to be a well-educated man with a very strong opinion. As Australia is a country that is so influenced by America and its culture, it is quite evident that this relevant issue of, in America, is easily reflected within Australia. We're demonstrated here with the American battle for the legalisation of euthanasia, and as a result of this evidence, we should see that it should be legalised. Australians should follow suit and legalise euthanasia in Australia for exactly the same reasons. Firstly, to put suffering people out of their misery. That is the most important reason. In that case, I think that it is definitely essential for the health of Australians that euthanasia should be legalised in Australia. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys.